Hello and welcome to Eurotech Greensboro. In the shop today we have this very nice red 1967 Volvo 1800S. So let's go have a closer look at it. This car came to us today from its most recent owner. He purchased the car in California and brought it here to Greensboro. And the car is in very nice shape. It's not perfect, but it's a very nice car. As you can see, the wheels are, again, less than perfect. But for a 1967 car, it's in very, very nice shape. We're going to walk around to the front here and see how it looks. Classic Swedish styling from the 1960s. These cars were manufactured in the early 60s through about 1972 or maybe 1973. The shape changed very little. They did make a station wagon version of it. We had one in here for a while. It's not here right now. Perhaps it'll come back later. From the rear, the car looks very nice. It's got some tail fins left over from the 50s and early 60s. Again, a lot of that Swedish style. Really is in magnificent shape, and you'll notice it has two exhaust pipes, dual pipes for the exhaust, which are chrome tipped on this one at any rate. Working our way towards the rear of the car, we see tail fins, which are perhaps a bit of a throwback to 1950s styling. But this is a very classic shape for Volvo, and it stands out and is unique unto itself. So let's have a look at the trunk for a minute. The trunk is held closed by a latch, and there is a key lock. You can put a key in here and lock it. You can leave it unlocked and just press the button and the trunk will open. And inside the trunk we see, this is where the gas filler, you put gasoline in there and it flows down into the tank, which is underneath the carpet here. We have some books, some Volvo books, and there's room for 3 or 4 good-sized suitcases back here. This is really a good-sized trunk. Another unique feature of the 1800 Volvo, here on the rear quarter we have the fuel filler, and you take the key. This has to be locked and unlocked with the key. It won't stay closed unless you lock it with the key. So you turn the key and lift it, and you just fill right in there. Now there's a real trouble area here. This cap is what seals that gas tank from the rain, and this spring here, of course, causes the cap to press down firmly. And this little hole right back here drains any water that might leak around here in the rain or a car wash. Water will leak around here and fill this well up. This hole drains it. These holes become stopped up, and when they get clogged up, this well will fill with water. If this spring is weak or this rubber seal is not intact, then water is going to go right into the gas tank. This has brought more than a few 1800s to a halt because of water in the gas. Also on the rear of the car, we notice a combination reverse light and license plate light underneath this chrome reverse light. There's another light lens that shines light down onto the license plate of the car. Of course, we have the 1800S badge. S stands for Sweden. These cars were produced in Sweden. The very first 1800s were called P1800s because the body was manufactured by a company called Pressed Steel in England. When they moved the production of the car over to Sweden, they dropped the P1800, instead called it an 1800S for Sweden. And noting the driver's side of the car, we'll look inside the car at the interior. The car is locked with a key. You would simply insert a key into the key slot, turn it to unlock the car, and then you can open the door, and there you are with a nice interior. I'm going to use a jack stand to hold the door open for us because these cars are just notorious. The door check simply won't hold the door open. They just won't do it. And we'll notice we have good old wind-up windows and a somewhat unique door opening handle right here. You pull back to open and forward to lock. A nice typical Volvo door seal. These seats have been freshly redone, probably by the previous owner. The seats are most notable for the lack of a headrest, which Volvo, they should have a headrest in them. It does have a tiny little back seat, which is very nice, and you can certainly put children back there. Perhaps the occasional adult could sit back there sideways, and the back folds down to make a package area for extra luggage space, so you can carry more stuff back there. Really nice, neat little feature of these cars. And panning around to the interior, we see this very interesting finish of the dashboard, which is very much Volvo, very much the 1800s. They kept this until they came out with the 1800 ES, which was the fuel-injected car, and they covered that nice metal with a wood grain. The switches you see are basically the same thing you would see in a 122 Volvo, with the writing above each switch as to exactly what its function is. And the headlight switch, well, the wiper switch also is a two-position switch, slow and fast for the wipers. And the same with the headlights. It's a two-position switch, parking, full headlights, and you can turn this knob, which will increase or decrease the illumination of the instrument panel lights. The dimmer switch is below. It's operated by the foot. It's to the left, or I'm sorry, to the right of this lever. So that is the dimmer switch, just to the left of the clutch pedal, brake pedal, accelerator pedal. The lever you saw me pull, I'm going to try to show you. It's well up under the dash right here. This holds the hood shut. So up is shut, and if I push it down, it's going to open the hood. So back up to the top, we have, this is a very classic Volvo 1800 instrument system. I'm playing with the light here to see if we can get a better look at these instruments. On the left we have a tachometer. In the middle we have Smith's gauges. The top one is water temperature, the bottom one is oil temperature, And if you look very carefully there, you can see at the bottom it says Made in England. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus on that. Yep, Smith's Made in England. These gauges are really unusual and unique, only to a Volvo 1800. We have a speedometer, and the speedometer has indicator lights in it for the generator light, the high beam warning light, and of course the turn signals on or off. I'm very sorry that won't focus any better than that. Working our way over to the right, we have the overdrive switch that turns the optional overdrive on and off. A little light behind the switch is an indicator to indicate when the overdrive is engaged, which on this car it's only engaged in 4th gear. We have the troublesome ignition switch. More details about those later when I describe how the coil works. We have a fuel gauge, an oil pressure gauge, and a clock. Heater fan, 2 speeds. Overdrive switch, indicator light for the overdrive switch. Continuing our tour, to the right we see a rear view mirror growing right up out of the top of the dashboard, and what you see there is a blank off plate for the radio. There is no radio in the car, never been one installed in this car. Cigarette lighter and ashtray. Passenger grab handle. Below we have a switch panel which contains a pull-out knob that opens some ventilation, an on-off switch for a interior light or a map light, passenger footwell. This is where the heat actually comes out, and you can just see the heater controls, which really live under the dash, and they're 3 levers. One for air, turns air on and off. One for defrost, directs air to the windshield or below to the passenger's feet. And one that actually controls the temperature, down being hot and up being cool. As we work our way up past the windshield to the headliner, we see 2 sun visors, passenger side and driver's side. There's a bracket missing, which will catch this if it were there. It's not there. And a very typical perforated headliner, which is very typical of European cars of the era. So now that we know how to open the hood, let's open the hood and see what's in there. The hood opens from the middle of the car, or right in front of the windshield, and opens forward. I've already released the latch inside, so up it goes. It's held in place by that strut there, which has a mechanical lock, which you have to release before you lower it. Damage to the hood could result if you don't do that. From the driver's side, from the left side of the car, just looking straight down, we see first of all the very unique, unusual coil that Volvo uses, which it has a center high tension lead. Below it, which you can't really see, is the wire that goes to the points inside the distributor. Right here, missing, is the power wire that energizes the coil with the ignition on. It's not there. The reason it's not there is because it comes in from the very bottom through an armored cable that's directly attached to the back of the ignition switch. This is a theft-proof device on the part of Volvo. It works well, but if for some reason the coil goes bad or the ignition switch goes bad, you have to replace the entire assembly. Coil and ignition switch and armored cable that connects the two. So just next to the coil, we have the clutch master cylinder with the reservoir included. Then we have the brake master cylinder, and this is a 2-stage master cylinder. which really didn't get started until 1968 was when it was first required. This is a brake union, so the brake warning switch is right there, and this is a junction box that directs brake fluid to the front and rear brakes. Forward to this we have a mechanism that mounts the choke cable. This is the cable coming out of the instrument panel, and it makes a 90-degree turn and goes through here over to the carburetor. This is a remote mounted Girling power brake servo or brake booster. Instead of the foot pressing directly on it, it uses vacuum pressure. Fairly common on certainly on British cars of the area. Looking deeper into the engine compartment, we see a distributor, a Bosch distributor in the case of Volvo. That's the distributor cap. To the left of that is a device, a little box that mounts on the side of the engine, and it simply vents fumes out the top through that hose over into the carburetor. I know that's the wrong carburetor. I'll tell you about that later. 4 spark plugs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oil filler cap. Somebody's painted the fan black. It should be yellow. It has a standard Volvo radiator, and again, this one has an overflow tank that came about in later years, probably 68 or later. This car is supposed to be a 67. That horn just behind the radiator overflow cap is an add-on horn. It's not mounted in the right place. It should be in front of the grille. Continuing our tour from the other side, we see the overflow cap. We see the aftermarket horn. This is a fuel filter that is added on. That's not factory equipment, but it's certainly a nice thing to have. And here we see the elephant in the room, a Weber carburetor. This is a conversion that a lot of people do to Volvos, MGs, BMWs. A lot of cars get these Webers put on here. It's a 2-stage, 2-barrel carburetor. It does not provide as much horsepower as the dual SUs. It's very reliable. It makes the engine run very smoothly, but you really lose a lot of performance. Every single person I ever talked to who converted a car from SUs to one of these Webers is unhappy with the results. Not with the way the carburetor works, but simply the fact that they lost so much power. The SU carburetors are excellent, reliable carburetors. They can be made to work by somebody that knows how to work them. There's nothing wrong with keeping those SUs. And for what you spent to put this Weber on here, we could have fixed your SUs and made them work properly. So looking towards the rear of the car, just below the windshield, this is where the battery lives. This is the windshield washer pump and the windshield washer reservoir. These battery boxes on 1800s can get some rust in them underneath there because of sulfuric acid in the battery. The one on this car seems to be in very good shape, actually. This is the top side of the heater control valve. This is where the engine, or I'm sorry, where the car chassis number is located. This is the top side of the heater control valve. These are heater hoses. One goes directly into the heater, the other goes directly into the engine block, and this is where the heater blower resides. So I'll pan around and show you the rest of the engine. Right there in front of the brake master cylinder is the plate, the number data plate. We can pan around, we see the steering rod below the brake master cylinders, the PVC crankcase ventilation hose, our choke cable, and etc. With the Volvo 1800 up on the lift, we're going to go have a look underneath. So standing in front of the car, looking from the bottom, the first thing we see is the bottom of the bumper. So I'm moving towards the rear of the car now. This is the tie rod end that connects the two steering tie rods to the wheels. So when you turn the steering wheel, it moves this rod back and forth. That's connected to the two wheels, and that moves the wheels left and right. Forward of that, we see the bottom of the crankshaft pulley with the generator belt on it. We see the bottom of the bottom radiator hose, the oil pan. This is sold by every dealership in the world as a tow hook, an optional extra. It's a boat tie down. It's where they put the cars on the boats to ship them over here, and they tie them down with this. And moving more towards the rear, we see the bottom of the oil pan. We see in the side of the oil pan right here, this is the sensor for the oil temperature gauge. And that sensor is broken on this car. You can see this is the wire that connects it. It's a mercury-filled tube that goes up to the gauge. As the oil gets hotter, the mercury expands, moves up to the gauge, and raises the needle. Somewhere in the past, it was broken on this car. We see the exhaust downpipes heading towards the rest of the exhaust system, the muffler, etc. This is the bell housing, so the clutch is inside there. This is the actual transmission itself. I'm also going to show you the disc brake on this car. It has disc brakes on the front, and that gold thing is the actual brake caliper, and you can see inside is the that's the back of a brake pad, and this is the other brake pad on the other side with the brake rotor in the middle. So when you step on the brake pedal, fluid flows through this hose here into the brake caliper, and the pistons in the caliper squeeze these two pads together against the brake rotor, and that causes the motion of the car to be retarded. So this is the 4-speed transmission bolted to the back of the transmission, covered in grease like the rest of the bottom of the car, is the Laycock de Normanville overdrive unit, which is supposed to work only in 4th gear in this car. That's one of the things we're going to have to fix, is that it's wired incorrectly. So we're going to have to take this apart and fix it. And looking generally underneath the car, we see it is very rust-free. The thing is in beautiful condition underneath. No rust, straight, very nice car. Continuing towards the rear, we have the drive shaft tunnel, more exhaust system, emergency brake cable. So when you pull the emergency brake, it pulls a wire and tightens up the brakes. Drum brakes on the rear on this car. This is the Dana rear end. This is a rear end made here in America by the Dana Corporation, a famous company that's been manufacturing car parts for a long time. And this is the bottom of the gas tank. The rear muffler. You can see red overspray from when the car was repainted. And continuing to the rear, we see the rear of the bottom of the rear bumper and the license plate. This car came to us today from its most recent owner. He purchased the car in California and brought it here to Greensboro. And the car is in very nice shape. It's not perfect, but it's a very nice car. As you can see, the wheels are, again, less than perfect. But for a 1967 car, it's in very nice shape. We're going to walk around to the front here and see how it looks. Classic Swedish styling from the 1960s. These cars were manufactured in the early 60s through about 1972 or maybe 1973. The shape changed very little. They did make a station wagon version of it. We had one in here for a while. It's not here right now. Perhaps it'll come back later. Subsequent research shows this to be a 1967 model car, even though the title it was delivered with, the California title, shows it to be a 1968. This is kind of an error that was made by the delivering dealer, or perhaps the California DMV. The car really is a 67. We've certified that through Volvo Heritage, and the proof lies in the fact that it has no side marker lights. The confusion is that it has a dual brake master cylinder, which is a 68 only, but also side marker lights were required by the federal government for 1968. We find this happens a lot with the European manufacturers in these transition cars. They wanted to get a little bit ahead of themselves and get a little bit caught up with the future, so to speak. So they started adding these 1968 parts a little bit early in the production process. This just causes massive confusion among mechanics and parts suppliers and the collector community, but it is what it is. It's a 1967 model car. So this concludes our tour of this 1967 model Volvo 1800S. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please stay tuned for more videos of cars in the shop here at Eurotech Greensboro. Next up, I think we'll do the Volvo 122 that you've seen in the background of some of these shots of the red 1800. After that, I've got a nice late model MGB that I'm going to do, and a lot of other stuff after that. We get here at Eurotech, we get a huge variety of vintage cars in, and I want to do my best to share these cars with you. So leave comments and constructive criticism. Subsequent research shows this to be a 1967 model car, even though the title it was delivered with, the California title, shows it to be a 1968. This is kind of an error that was made by the delivering dealer, or perhaps the California DMV. The car really is a 67. We've certified that through Volvo Heritage, and the proof lies in the fact that it has no side marker lights. The confusion is that it has a dual brake master cylinder, which is a 68 only, but also side marker lights were required by the federal government for 1968. We find this happens a lot with the European manufacturers in these transition cars. They wanted to get a little bit ahead of themselves and get a little bit caught up with the future, so to speak. So they started adding these 1968 parts a little bit early in the production process. This just causes massive confusion among mechanics and parts suppliers and the collector community, but it is what it is. It's a 1967 model car. So this concludes our tour of this 1967 model Volvo 1800S. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please stay tuned for more videos of cars in the shop here at Eurotech Greensboro. Next up, I think we'll do the Volvo 122 that you've seen in the background of some of these shots of the red 1800. After that, I've got a nice late model MGB that I'm going to do, and a lot of other stuff after that. We get here at Eurotech, we get a huge variety of vintage cars in, and I want to do my best to share these cars with you. So leave comments and constructive criticism, please, at the bottom, and stay tuned for more. And thank you very much for watching this. Good night.